Welcome to my channel, Arts and Literature. Translation Studies, by Susan Bassnett is very difficult to understand. So, today I will decode the history of translation during 17th century within easy and simple words. I have already uploaded videos related to the introduction of translation studies, translation during Romans and Bibles. If you haven't watched them, then you can check it on my YouTube channel. So, without further delay, let's begin. During the mid-17th century, several changes occurred in the field of translation, influenced by social, political, and cultural factors. Here are some notable changes that took place during this period. Renaissance and Humanism. The revival of classical learning and humanist values during 17th century led to a renewed interest in translating classical texts from Greek and Latin into vernacular languages, particularly in Europe. Professionalization of translation. The mid-17th century saw the emergence of professional translators who specialized in the art of translation. Translation became recognized as a distinct skill. Bible translation. The translation of the Bible into various languages was a significant endeavor during the 17th century. Scientific and philosophical translations. The scientific and philosophical advancements of the 17th century prompted an increase in the translation of scientific and philosophical works. Works by prominent figures such as Galileo Galilei, Isaac Newton, and René Descartes were translated into multiple languages, broadening their influence. Improved translation techniques. With the development of printing technology and the availability of bilingual dictionaries, translators had better resources at their disposal. The use of dictionaries and glossaries helped ensure the precise rendering of technical terms and specialized vocabulary. Linguistic studies. The 17th century witnessed significant advancements in linguistic studies, with scholars exploring the structure and grammar of various languages. Translation served as a tool for comparative linguistic analysis and the development of language learning materials. Influence of political and religious factors. The mid-17th century was marked by political and religious conflicts, such as the English Civil War and the 30 Years' War. These conflicts had an impact on translation, as ideological and religious differences influenced the choice of texts to be translated and the manner in which they were translated. Vernacular translation. The mid-17th century witnessed a shift towards translating texts into vernacular languages rather than exclusively relying on Latin. This change was influenced by the growing importance of national languages and the desire to make knowledge more accessible to the general public. During the 17th century, translation played a significant role in facilitating the exchange of knowledge, ideas between different cultures and languages, and contributing to the intellectual and scientific progress of the time. René Descartes was a prominent figure in the 17th century. He is a philosopher and mathematician. Descartes' focus on clear and distinct ideas can serve as a reminder to translators to be meticulous and precise in their rendering of the original text. Descartes' emphasis on rationalism and the importance of reason can also be applied to translation. Descartes was interested in developing a reliable method of reasoning. He sought to establish a framework that would allow individuals to arrive at justified beliefs and knowledge through a process of logical inference. In his philosophical works, Discourse on the Method, and Meditations on First Philosophy, he emphasized the importance of doubt, reason and deduction as tools for attaining certainty. He sought to develop a method of inductive reasoning. It involves deriving general principles on conclusions based on specific observations on examples. His exploration of this method mirrored the preoccupation of literary critics of that time who were interested in formulating rules creating aesthetic production. Just as Descartes looked to establish method of reasoning by examining rational thought processes, literary critics and writers sought to develop methodology for creating quality literature by analyzing and imitating the works of the ancient masters. Neoclassicals. Augustine's neoclassical artists placed a strong emphasis on imitative skills as a means of achieving artistic excellence. They believed that by closely studying and imitating the techniques and subjects, works, of classical art, ancient Greek and Roman art, they could capture the essence of classical perfection and create works that embodied timeless ideals. Sir John Denham. Sir John Denham was a prominent English poet and statesman who lived from 1614 to 1669. He was actually considered a proponent of neoclassical rules and principles in poetry. He drew inspiration from ancient Roman and Greek poets, particularly Virgil and Horace, and sought to adapt their formal techniques to the English language. It's worth noting that while Denham embraced neoclassical rules, he also brought his own sensibilities and experiences to his poetry. While his poetry maintained a formal structure, Denham also infused it with emotional depth and a sense of personal experience, capturing the spirit of the age in which he lived. Denham expressed his views on translation in his preface to the translation of Meimberg's History of the League. In this preface, he argued against the rigid adherence to the literal meaning of the source text, stating that a translator should aim to capture the spirit and essence of the work rather than focusing solely on a literal rendition. Denham believed that a successful translation should be faithful to the intention and style of the original work while also adapting it to suit the language and cultural context of the target audience. He emphasized the importance of maintaining the beauty and elegance of the language in the translation, even if it meant taking some liberties with the literal meaning. He believed that poetry should be a creative and emphasized the role of the translator as an artist and interpreter rather than a mere conveyor of words. Overall, Sir John Denham advocated for a more interpretive and creative approach to translation, emphasizing the importance of capturing the spirit and beauty of the original work rather than adhering strictly to a literal rendering. Abraham Cowley. Abraham Cowley is a 17th-century English poet. He did express his views on translation in his essay, Of Translated Verse. He argues that a translator should aim to capture the spirit, meaning, and style of the original work, rather than merely providing a literal word-for-word translation. Cowley emphasizes the importance of understanding the cultural and historical context of the source text to convey its nuances and subtleties effectively. In this essay, Cowley discusses the challenges and considerations involved in translating poetry from one language to another. Cowley expressed his unique approach to translation in the preface to his work, Pindari Codes. In this, he boldly asserted that he had the freedom to take, leave out and end what he pleased in his translations. According to him, his translations aimed to show not just what the original author said but also, what was his way and manner of speaking. He believed that it was important to convey the original author's distinct voice and expression and maintain the spirit and character of the original work rather than providing a literal rendering of their words. By doing so, he could offer readers a deeper understanding of the author's personality and writing style. John Dryden referred his method as imitation rather than trade translation. However, T.R. Steiner notes that Cowley's preface was seen as manifesto by the libertine translators. These translators embraced his philosophy and exercised their freedom to depart from the literal meaning of the original text in order to capture its essence and style. John Dryden. John Dryden, the influential English poet, playwright, and critic, made significant contributions to the theory and practice of translation during the 17th century. He believed that translation should be more than a mechanical reproduction of the original text, it should be an art form in its own right. Dryden's ideas on translation can be found in his essay, Of Dramatic Poesy, and his prefaces to various translations. One of Dryden's key principles of translation was to capture the spirit and meaning of the original work rather than adhering strictly to its literal words. He argued that the translator should strive to convey the author's intention and the essence of their work, while adapting it to the target language and culture. Dryden criticized literal and word-for-word translations that resulted in awkward or unnatural language. He argued that a good translator should possess a deep understanding of both the source and target languages and strive to make the translation sound natural and idiomatic. Dryden also recognized the challenges inherent in translating poetry, particularly the difficulty of reproducing the rhythmic and melodic qualities of the original verse. He argued that the translator should prioritize capturing the overall effect and emotional impact of the poetry rather than attempting a strict metrical equivalence. He advocated for a certain degree of flexibility and freedom in adapting the poetic form to suit the target language. In addition to his principles of translation, John Dryden also introduced the concepts of metaphrase, paraphrase, and imitation in relation to literary works. Metaphrase, also known as literal translation. The translator attempts to render each word and phrase of the source language into its equivalent in the target language, prioritizing fidelity to the original. This method aims to provide a precise and literal translation, often sacrificing fluency and naturalness in the target language. Paraphrase, Paraphrase involves conveying the meaning of the original text using different words and expressions in the target language. Instead of adhering strictly to the form and structure of the source text, the translator focuses on capturing the essence and intent of the original. It may involve some degree of interpretation and creative adaptation while retaining the core concepts and message of the original work. Imitation, also known as adaptation or free translation, departs significantly from the structure and wording of the source text. The translator takes creative liberties and reimagines the original work in the target language. Imitation, as proposed by Dryden, goes beyond translation or paraphrase. It involves taking an existing work as a model or inspiration and creating a new work in a similar style or genre. Imitation is not a literal translation or reproduction but rather an original composition that pays homage or responds to the ideas, themes, or form of the source material. It allows the writer to showcase their creativity and skill.
If you like my video, then like, comment and subscribe. Let me know in the comment section which type of video do you want in future.